ladies! Today I'm going to talk about 3 steps to boosting energy and busting brain fog. Today I'm going to introduce them and I'm going to give you a few smaller steps you can take towards these 3 big categories. So the first one is to balance blood sugar. This is a pretty big topic with the standard American diet because we have an abundance of carbohydrate and high carbohydrate and processed foods that our bodies were really not designed to consume that, have led to very high rates of diabetes, obesity, and blood sugar imbalance. The basics of what I start with my clients in balancing blood sugar is to make sure that for breakfast we are eating protein and healthy fat. Protein would be something like eggs or a naturally raised meat. That occasionally maybe we use something like a really good quality protein powder. I really try to focus the most on whole foods. So a healthy protein and a healthy fat. And the healthy fat could be eggs have healthy fat. We could have a naturally raised bacon, which has healthy fat. We could have avocado. We could have nuts and seeds. If you are further along in your journey and you intermittent fast, where you don't eat a full meal till later, but you do include a coffee or a tea with a little bit of healthy fat in it, then an MCT oil would be an option, or grass-fed butter. So there's a lot of options on healthy protein and healthy fat, and this is something I go more in depth on, and I will on future videos and articles. But start your morning out and make sure you're getting protein and healthy fat. I like to add things in before I start removing things because nobody likes it when they sit down with me and I start talking about removing or avoiding or restricting. None of that feels good. So we just start by adding in good stuff and eventually the other things get displaced. So we'll talk about what things we swap out, but start out just with a good breakfast with protein and healthy fat. If you are intermittent fasting and you don't eat breakfast, that is fine, and just make sure that when you do eat your first meal of the day, that it has healthy protein and healthy fat. Tip number 2 is really on the same topic. Do this at each meal. So every time you eat, make sure you're getting healthy fat, healthy protein. And then I'm going to add in non-starchy vegetables. So make sure we're getting vegetables as well. So that's tip number 2, is take what we talked about doing for the first meal of the day, whether that be breakfast or midday or later in the day, and then do that at every meal and add in non-starchy vegetables to those meals. Non-starchy vegetables at breakfast is important too, but when I'm working with people, I like to just introduce one step at a time, and eventually we get there, and then it's not overwhelming and we don't get stressed out in the process. Tip number 3 is to include complex carbohydrates from plant foods at your meals and swap that for any grain or refined grain food products that you're eating. So what those refined grain or grain products would be include breads and any types of breads like waffles, pizza, pancakes, any type of bread, croissant, cakes, cookies, all that kind of thing. It also includes pastas, so any kind of pasta like lasagna, spaghetti, linguine, anything like that. It also includes rice and quinoa and buckwheat and things like that. Now, caveat, it is winter and there's people that need more carbohydrates in your diet. And I'm going to do a lot more on this because it really depends on hormones. And are you pregnant? Are you breastfeeding? Are you insulin resistant? Do you have blood sugar issues? This is going to make a huge difference as to how many carbs you need. And so I don't like saying anything's good or bad, and that, I'm never going to make blanket recommendations. This is just generally speaking to the refined grain foods. I would definitely take a look at those, the breads, the pastas, things like that. Take those out. If you know right now that you need some complex carbohydrates, some grains like quinoa or buckwheat that would be more complex, keep those in. That's fine. But just start to take a look at the carb amount that you're eating through the day, if that's the point where you're at, and then you can start to optimize that for what you need on a daily basis. So what those plant foods would be that you're putting in are sweet potatoes and Squashes, winter squashes are great right now. They can be really comforting and grounding and warming and give you some of the carbs that you need in the day. So in general, you're just putting in more of those complex carbohydrates for the simple carbohydrates or the more refined grain foods like the breads and the pastas and the pizzas and the cookies and the cakes. So just start with that. As I said, this is a huge topic, and I'm going to put out a whole video on this and a lot more content to come on understanding carbohydrates, understanding what kinds or amounts might be right for you based on different conditions and issues and lifestyle approaches, as well as where you are in your life cycle. So stay tuned for that. The second step to boosting energy and busting brain fog is to optimize digestion. This is, again, a huge subject and one that I love very much, so I will be putting out lots more content on this. But to get you started, here's 3 tips to optimize digestion. The first is to use apple cider vinegar daily for a while and see what that does for you. The way to do this, oftentimes my clients like doing it first thing in the morning. You can add a tablespoon of raw, unfiltered apple cider vinegar to purified or filtered water. And it's fine if you want to put it in like 6 ounces. A lot of times I suggest, especially in wintertime, warming up the water or at least having it room temperature. But warm water can be great with that 1 to 2 tablespoons of raw, unfiltered apple cider vinegar. If you need to add a little organic lemon juice or a little bit of raw honey, that can help make it a bit more palatable as well. It can be wonderful for digestion. It supports skin health. It's actually good for the first step that we were talking about, balancing blood sugar. Apple cider vinegar can support appetite and satiety and blood sugar balance. So give that one a try, see what it does for you. I have awesome feedback often on apple cider vinegar. If you have some other issues going on with your digestion, such as a SIBO bacterial overgrowth or some dysbiosis that's causing you to be histamine intolerant, or maybe you have some other issues leading to histamine intolerance, then this may be problematic for you. And I'm not going to go specifically in depth because we could spend hours talking about some of these other problems, and I will be putting out content on those in the future. So this is just a general recommendation that can be great for a lot of people for digestion, but know that if it bothers you, if you have a stomach ulcer or you have some damage from an issue like celiac disease or something else that's been going on, this may not be the right approach for you right now, and that's okay. But for a lot of you that are feeling okay with your digestion or feel that you just like need a little extra support, it can stimulate enzyme and acid production in the stomach and help with your digestion and support all those other things I mentioned as well. So give that one a try. The second tip is to eat fermented foods or foods that have healthy bacteria, otherwise known as probiotics. So this could be a cultured yogurt. I would suggest one that doesn't have a bunch of sugar added. So a plain yogurt. You can always add a little bit of raw honey or stevia or some fruit to it if you'd like to flavor it up a bit. So that's the most common thing people think of as yogurt. There's also kefir, and you can use that. Fermented vegetables like kimchi, sauerkraut, pickles. Bubby's is a brand that is fermented. What you want to look for on the label is that there's sea salt and not vinegar. If there's vinegar, then it is not cultured or fermented, and you won't get that healthy bacteria. Other cultured or fermented food options include kombucha. That's become very popular. It can be a great alternative to soda or other sweet drinks or alcoholic beverages. So give that a try if you haven't yet. Some of them do have a little more sugar, some have less sugar. So again, with the balancing blood sugar and where you're at with that, keep an eye on the sugar amount in those, but they can be a really, really great option. And especially if you're consuming any of those other things, it's a great alternative. The third tip for optimizing digestion is to eat mindfully. And I just did a vlog post on this recently, so I'll put that link below. Go back and watch that if you haven't yet. The idea here is that you are relaxed while you're eating, and that's going to be really important for digestion. If you have crazy mornings getting kids off to school, Just see if you can find a different time to eat. If you need to eat when you get to work, if that's possible, not perfection, right? Especially when you have kids and you're running around. Just do the best that you can. And if that means that you're calmer when you're starting your day at work and like checking your email than you are when you're at home trying to get kids fed and coats on and all that stuff and out the door, then great. If you have to eat while you're checking your email, that's better than the alternative where you can't even like sit down and take a deep breath. Just try to find ways to relax while you're eating. And as I mentioned, check out that other video for some other ideas on mindful eating. Our third step is to prioritize sleep. This may seem obvious, I know, but I have to hear it over and over. So I'm going to keep telling you over and over in hopes that it continues to help you support your sleep and your energy. Tip number 1 is to stop eating 2 hours before you go to bed. This is also going to support your blood sugar, and it will support optimal digestion as well. If you are eating right before bed, go back to what I said about balancing blood sugar and have that type of meal 2 hours or more before you go to bed. And that will also help your digestion from waking you up because you're still trying to digest right after eating as you're also trying to fall asleep. Tip number 2 is to stop using technology or any sort of screens 2 hours before you go to bed as well. Phones, computer, tablets, anything like that. I know you may have a little bit of that to do in the evening, and I get it. But see if you can do that first. So, for example, what I will do is get my kids to bed, and as soon as they're in bed, if there's anything I have to do on my phone or an email I need to send, I will get that out of the way first. And then I'll move on to activities that might be more active, but they don't involve technology, like washing the dishes, sweeping the floor, cleaning up any toys or whatever, getting backpacks ready for the next day. And then I'll move into the most relaxing things like maybe taking a shower, getting myself ready for bed. So see if you can organize your night so that you're slowly moving towards the more relaxing things before you go to bed. And then tip number 3 is to take 5 minutes or more to do something relaxing right before you fall asleep. And ideally, some sort of mindfulness practice. Yeah, I really like using Insight Timer. Here's the one. Breaking the rule of using your technology is if you are going to use something very specifically to be a guided meditation. And I have a lot of people that find that helpful. It doesn't interfere with their sleep. You could do a little bit of yoga. You could do just some deep breathing. What I personally will do is get myself into bed, all ready for bed. All the lights are off. And my phone is basically like I already have, the alarm set that I need for the next morning, anything like that. And then I will use Insight Timer if I want a guided meditation. And you can pick things that range from 5 minutes up to an hour. So whatever I have time for, I will pick that, and I'll pick something that is fitting for maybe what I need that day. And then it guides me through it. And as soon as it's over, I just turn my settings on my phone to turn off the wireless. So put it on airplane mode and go to bed. You can also just have everything preset, like your technology turned off, you're ready for bed, and you sit and do a seated meditation. Sometimes I will just sit and do 5 minutes. If you need to set a clock at first, that can be really helpful, like set a timer for 5 minutes so that you actually do it and you're not wondering how long you've been sitting there. Once you get going with it, you often will really, really look forward to it, and you may not need to use anything to guide you, or you may not need a timer. But those can be good tools to get started. This video was really like an intro to a lot of things I'm going to be talking about coming up. So stay tuned. I'm going to go more in depth on each of these steps to boosting energy and busting brain fog and get really more into the nitty-gritty. So thank you for watching, and I hope you have a lovely week.